Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining from. Thank you for taking the time to join us on this introduction to Cloud SIEM today. My name is Stefan Tapp. I am a solutions engineer for Sumo Logic. My main focus is in the security operations SIEM kind of space. I've been with Sumo Logic for around about 12 months now. Previously worked for a couple of other vendors, but have come primarily from a security operations background for the last 20 years or so. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through a demo of our Cloud SIEM Enterprise product. It's a little bit different than anything that you might have seen before. It looks quite different. It works quite different compared to a normal SIEM platform. So let me just jump in here and we'll start. Got a couple of slides to go through first of all. Nothing too onerous, so I'm not going to bore you with death by PowerPoint. And then we'll jump across and actually go in and I'll run through a live demo. Okay, so challenges, security operations. Essentially, it has to change. We have a couple of large problems now, really, that are kind of affecting the security operations space. Number one is that transformation to cloud. So cloud migration spending is growing at 6 times the rate of general IT spending. According to Gartner, we're looking at somewhere like a 23% growth in spending over 2021, somewhere around about $332 billion. Is going to be spent on transformation to the cloud. The problem that brings is there's an increase in the number of alerts that SOC teams have to work with. Around about 3 out of 4 security teams agree that cloud infrastructure is generating more alerts than similar on-premise environments. Legacy security tools and SIEMs weren't really built for that kind of cloud transformation. A lot of them still rely on on-premise collectors and that kind of thing, and also don't have that visibility across multiple cloud vendors. So what we need to do is we need to have this shift towards towards a cloud-built security operations focused tool and center. The second point here really is, as we're introducing this shift to cloud, it's also bringing in a shift in the threat landscape. So migrating our apps to the cloud, are introducing their own attack surfaces. We all read, articles in the news about exposure of unsecured S3 buckets, that kind of thing, where suddenly information around customer databases and so on is being exposed publicly. In fact, 67% of professionals are saying that they're seeing a number of an increase in the number of security alerts, since they've moved to the cloud. And 55% of those people are actually saying that is due to cloud infrastructure. We're suddenly having this kind of exposure to new threat landscapes and so on. And again, talking about something like an S3 bucket, it's a simple misconfiguration, right? It can suddenly expose loads of information. But also not just that. On top of that, we have a proliferation of mobile devices, Internet of Things, multi-cloud environments. So these are all different areas that we now have to start considering security monitoring around. We've moved from that shift of traditional kind of server, one server, one application, to containers, modern applications, load balancers, VPC flows. These are all areas now within that cloud environment that we have to start taking logging from, and getting that additional visibility. We have an increase in the number of zero-day threats that are being, thrown at us in our organizations. Ransomware attacks continue to be a real major problem. And, as fast as we're kind of changing and updating and bringing out new rules and so on, those attack methods change constantly as well. So, we're just always on the kind of the back foot trying to monitor those kinds of things. The third challenge there, as you can see on this this presentation slide, is around alert fatigue. Around about 83% of security teams are reporting alert fatigue due to the number of events that are being generated. High numbers of false positives. And the problem we have there is it's not as simple anymore as going out and hiring another 2 or 3 security analysts. We have a global shortage of security professionals in the industry. Keeping up with the latest technologies, having to train our security analysts on these new technologies. They're all having a load and an impact on the way we detect and are able to manage our day-to-day kind of security operations. Too many alerts. Like I said, I've worked with customers in the past generating 8 to 9 million security incidents a day. When you're working with a team of maybe 5 or 6 security analysts, you just can't keep up with that. There's no way that you can make sense of that kind of log volume that's coming in. The other issue as well is that kind of proliferation of security tools as well. Having to pivot to different dashboards to view security alerts and not having that single pane of glass kind of capability. So essentially, that's part of the problem. Security operations has to change. We need to do something better with the technology and not just throw people and resources at the problem. So here's a few different ways, and I guess that Cloud SIEM can help us with improving that. The key thing, which I'm going to show you actually in our core product, is around automation of the investigation phase. So quite often we talk around being able to automate responses. I'm sure you guys have heard of SOAR technologies that can kind of take an alert and then go and automate a response to it. But for far too long, there's been a gap around how do I actually automate the investigation phase? How do I take those several hundred thousands of alerts that are generated daily and distill those down into little clusters of signals, that I can go in and focus on and make sense of? So the Cloud SIEM product has this insight capability. It will cluster those signals together. It enriches it with additional information, and it makes my investigation time as a security analyst a lot quicker. Second point on the slide there is around that kind of multi-tenant dynamic scalability. So Sumo Logic, being a cloud native platform, was designed in the cloud for the cloud. So a good example there is I don't have to worry about if I suddenly get an increase in my number of security events coming in. Let's say I have a denial of service attack against one of my customer-facing portals. Now suddenly I'm generating millions more events than I would do normally. I need to make sure I have a platform that can automatically scale the compute to handle that load. A lot of legacy platforms were designed to meet a specific event per second threshold or an ingest level, and they can't automatically scale. And the worst scenario there is that suddenly my platform stops responding. As a SOC analyst, I can't, I can't go in and investigate the problem. My SIEM platform's gone down, etc. Another benefit as well of having something like the Sumo Logic core platform is I only need to ingest that data once, okay? And then I can use that for multiple use cases. My DevOps teams, IT operations, security operations, they all have access to this data. So instead of then having multiple log platforms in my environment, I have one platform that can be accessed by any number of users for their own different reasons. Cloud SIEM is that kind of overlay dedicated for the security operations staff. Again, leveraging off of that kind of core platform, I have deep search availability. I can go in and search against my raw data. I can leverage various different methods of reporting and dashboards. correlation rules, and then the advanced capabilities here of Cloud SIEM itself. But to get that information into the platform, we need to make that as easy as possible. Okay, so having a cloud native solution means that I can host collectors in the cloud managed by Sumo logic. I don't have to necessarily stand up infrastructure specifically to collect all of my log sources, because there will be a few exceptions to that. You know, if I'm collecting something from a legacy platform, I still need to have that ability to be able to collect that locally. And then lastly, the point here is around rapid time to value. I need to have a SIEM platform where I can stand it up and I can have it operational in the shortest possible time. So one of the strong points again of Cloud SIEM and Sumo logic is that our time to value is incredibly quick. I've worked with some customers where literally within a couple of weeks of standing the solution up, they were able to go in and detect, you know, pretty serious malicious activity within their environment. So one other recent thing as well is, you know, Sumo logic was recognized by Gartner in the 2021 SIEM Magic Quadrant. So that's the first time that we've actually appeared in the GMQ, which we're pretty proud of. As you can see here on this particular slide, you know, we kind of landed in the visionary quadrant, which is a really good place to be for a first-time player. So, you know, you can be rest assured that the Sumo logic platform has got some good pedigree here to be included in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. Just to cover off the other core aspects, I guess, of the product before I jump into Cloud SIEM itself. So we have kind of 4 different areas of security within Sumo logic. On the particular slide that you guys are looking at here at the moment, we start with our audit and compliance on that left-hand side. So if I need to be able to log everything centrally to meet a compliance requirement, you know, whether that's PCI, could be an ISO 27001 compliance, etc. I have the ability to be able to bring those logs in, you know, for those audit and compliance reasons. Our next step up there then is cloud security monitoring and analytics. So we start to leverage a little bit more technology and machine learning over that as well. So I have, you know, correlation and alerting. I'm able to detect for unusual activity, something happening that's outside of my normal kind of baseline, that kind of thing. At the same point as well, we're also doing data enrichment. I've got a threat intel service provided by CrowdStrike at this particular level. That's also there, a core part of our product. The next step up then is this Cloud SIEM, which is what we're going to be talking about and having this demo of shortly. That allows me to then take the correlation one step further. I'm doing everything in real time. I'm enriching my events with additional information, whether that's something as simple as enriching a user from Active Directory, providing threat intelligence lookups against my events coming in, down to something like an integration with VirusTotal to provide me additional context on the alerts as they're being generated. It also has that important, you know, automated investigation point, which we're going to dive into. And then lastly here, Cloud SOAR. So Sumo logic acquired a Cloud SOAR company this year, a company called DF Labs, which has a really, really strong, very good SOAR capability. So now we have that kind of complete end-to-end focus. You know, I can automate my investigation phase, and now I can then automate my my responses using playbooks, etc. So with that, what we're going to do now is we're going to switch across into our Cloud SIEM platform. Just bear with me 2 seconds while I just flick that share across. Here we go. Okay, cool. All right, so you guys should now be looking at our Cloud SIEM Enterprise platform. As I said at the very beginning, right, this looks quite different compared to other SIEM platforms that you might be familiar with. It was designed by some gamers to kind of give it that kind of modern futuristic look, but at the same time, it is a completely and fully functional platform. I'll give you a quick overview of what we see here on this heads-up display, and then I'm going to kind of slightly switch focus to a security analyst view, and then we'll actually go in and take a quick look at how we would investigate some of these insights that are generated. So starting off here, top left-hand corner, as you can see, these are my events that are being generated throughout the platform. So we start off essentially with our records. Those are my events that are being forwarded from my relevant security sources within the core Sumo platform. As they come into Cloud SIEM, they get enriched with additional information, and then we create that into what we call a record. Those records then get processed around somewhere around about 450 to 500 out of the box content rules. And they can be anything from detecting something like multiple failed logins followed by a success. Could be a one-on-one security alert, CrowdStrike detection from an endpoint, etc. Okay. Those rules are curated by Sumo. We update them a couple of times a week, but you do have the ability to be able to go in and create custom rules as well. And then lastly, the magic part. Those signals are looked at from our insight clustering engine. And what our insight clustering engine is doing in this case, it's tracking a few different things in each of those signals. So the first thing it's tracking is the entity. Okay, the entity could be a user, could be an IP address, could be a host name, could be pretty much anything. I have the ability to create custom entities. The second point there is it also looks at the severity score of each of those signals as well. So every security signal that we generate has some form of security, severity score associated with it. It then takes that entity, it takes the severity score, and it also applies a look back window. Now, out of the box, we can look back over 14 days for activity. That gives me the ability to look for some of the more kind of low and slow attacks. I've got a user that's had their email credentials compromised in a phishing email. The bad guy is likely to log into that mailbox, sit there for a few days and understand, what does a user do? Who do they collaborate with? What's their function within the organization? And then after a few more days, they might start to use those credentials to do other things in the platform and generate more security alerts. So we have the ability to track back over that time window. Then what happens is when my severity score for that particular entity reaches a set threshold, around about 13 points of activity, that gets clustered together into what we call an insight. Okay, the insight then contains all of those relevant security signals that were detected as part of that particular attack. It presents all of those into one place where now, as a security analyst, I'm able to go in and investigate those literally within a couple of clicks. And that's kind of how those numbers are distilled down. That's how we've gone from 5 million records in 24 hours down to 6 insights that I need to investigate. Lastly here then, that same information is kind of, replicated in this radar view in the center of the screen. So my outer ring there, and you can see it refreshes for me automatically. My outer ring are my records, okay? The inner ring there are the signals. And then the colored triangles, those are my insights. They're going to be in different colors, dependent whether they're new, in progress, closed, assigned to a specific team, and so on. I'm also tracking SOC metrics here as well. And we do pass some of this information back into the core platform to give you a more comprehensive view around security operations. So I can track metrics on which particular attack stages are more prevalent in my platform. And those are aligned with the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about those in a second. Then finally, over here on the right-hand side, my top right-hand panel here is kind of a baseball card view of my latest insight that's been generated. So I can see the insight name here, again, aligned with those MITRE ATT&CK framework tags that I mentioned. I can see the entity involved. In this case, it's a user called Deb Smith. And then finally here in the bottom part, how many signals are part of this insight cluster? What's the overall severity level? And then I have a crosshair in the center, which is essentially a very quick snapshot of my timeline on that horizontal axis. And then dependent on the severity score of each of the signals, depends on where they're going to appear on that vertical axis. Okay. My duration window, so how long has it taken me to track this particular insight from the first signal to the last signal, 3 hours in this case. And then I have something called a global confidence score. This is another pretty unique feature that we have within the Sumo core platform, within the Sumo Cloud SIEM platform. Every time an insight is generated, we look at some of the metrics around how is it generated and how does our customers react to that insight. So again, because we're a cloud native solution, we're able to gather information about how that was closed. Okay, so if we took this particular insight here, customer investigates it, says, hey, yeah, this was a real incident. Okay, so they mark it as resolved and it gets marked as a real incident. We take some of those statistics across all of our customers, we normalize the information, and then we start to build what we call our global confidence ratings for insights. So the more times we see an insight being marked as a real positive, a true incident, then the higher the global confidence score goes. If we have insights that are generally being marked as false positive, okay, then that global confidence score is going to be pretty low. And I'll show you in a second how we actually use that as part of that SOC kind of workflow as well. Lastly here then, my panel here on the bottom right hand side is literally just telling me, who's working on which particular insight, which are the latest insights being generated, and just gives me that kind of quick snapshot view there. Okay, so I'm going to change focus now. I'm going to put my SOC analyst hat on. I would do if I had one. And I'm going to take you through an insight and take you through that investigation workflow, okay, and show you how easy it is within the within Cloud SIEM to do that investigation. So I'm going to click on my Insights tab at the top. This takes me now into my Insights view. This is what we call our Kanban view board. So essentially all of my new insights are here on this left-hand panel, okay? If I wanted to reassign any of these to any of the other teams that you can see here, either mark it as in progress if I'm the only guy working on this, if I want to send it to another team, whether that's, a tier 3, tier 2, tier 1, whatever, I can just drag this across, okay, and it will reassign it for me automatically. So if I take something like this, this one for Deb Smith, this is the one we saw at the beginning. Okay, if I'm going to now reassign this to tier 3, I just drag it across. Okay, it should refresh and update it. Just bear with me 1 second. A lot of Zoom time today, so I'm going to drive through it. My apologies. Okay, so you can see how quickly there I've been able to reassign that particular insight for investigation. Now, we talked about global confidence, and I guess a good question here, and sometimes I get asked this by customers, is how do I actually prioritize what to investigate here? There's a couple of different ways that I can choose how to prioritize. One is obviously looking at it depends on how many incidents I've got, looking at the first one that was generated, i.e. the oldest. Another way is to actually look at the severity level. So you can see some of these are marked as medium, some of them are marked as high and low, etc. Okay. That particular severity rating is a combination of the severity scores for the signals that are part of this insight cluster. Okay. So I could prioritize it that way. I could say, actually, let's go and look at all of the high severity ones first. The other thing I could do is I could actually realign these to that global confidence score. So where you can see my global confidence score here of 95, I actually have the ability to come here and say, actually, I want to look at the confidence score, and I want the highest one showing first. Okay. So now I can prioritize my investigation and start looking at them according to the confidence score. So let's take a look at this, this particular one here that's just been generated by this user Deb Smith. So again, now as a SOC analyst, I'm into my kind of workbench view. A couple of main panels here then of relevance. My panel on the left-hand side gives me some information around what this insight is. So the insight name, as you can see here, is a combination of two things. One is a sequential number. Okay, so the next one being generated, for example, would be 3480. The second part of the insight naming convention is using the MITRE ATT&CK framework stages. We can do that either by tactic or by technique. Okay, so either of those options are available. Every security signal that we generate, I have the ability to have those MITRE ATT&CK framework tags associated. We either do that, ourselves here at Sumo with the content that we curate for you, or if you wanted to go in and create custom content, then I can assign specific tags accordingly. I can also create custom tags. I'm not just constrained to things like the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Okay. So within this left-hand panel, I've got some additional information here around this insight. So again, here's the entity. Okay, it's a user in this particular example. Excuse me. Now, because this is an Active Directory user, I have the ability to enrich this user information from Active Directory. So you can see when I hover over the username, I'm getting some additional information here. So I'm getting the normalized name of the user, the real name, which department, their email address. I can also dig a little bit deeper under the entity view, and I might get additional information like who the manager is, that kind of thing. Okay. So then I've got more information here around the severity levels, the global confidence, how many signals are part of this cluster, when was it last seen, when was it first generated, and so on. All the kind of usual stuff you'd expect to see with a security incident in a SIEM platform. Here are those MITRE ATT&CK framework tags again, so I can see all of those there. I also have the ability here to add some additional notes as well to this if I'm investigating. Okay. Coming back up to the top, I'll talk about these in a second. Let's dive in and kind of go through the workflow and the investigation bit first, and then we'll come back and look at how we would close this particular incident off once we've done our investigation. So on my right-hand side here, this histogram at the top is again giving me that timeline of signal activity. So my first signals obviously appear here on the left-hand side and then flow across according to the time. As I'm scrolling down through here, I'm getting this kind of really useful snapshot view of the security signals that have been generated as part of this particular incident. So I can see here my first one generated has come from my Zscaler device. Okay, it's seeing an elevated risk score event. My key pieces of information are being extracted even at this level. So I can see any IP addresses involved, any URLs, the usernames, and also here's another useful thing. Because we have threat intelligence that we can leverage into the platform, every time a record is created, it automatically enriches it against threat intelligence. Okay, so in that record, if the URL, the IP address, the file hash matches a threat intelligence list or a threat intelligence service, it populates that information into the raw signal for me. Okay, so I have that information as well. As I'm scrolling down through here again as part of my investigation, okay, here's a threat intel match against the domain name. And then finally, as I come down here, what I can see is a Sentinel-1, an EDR alert saying that, hey, malicious keylog has been detected on this endpoint. Again, all of the key pieces of information are here for me. Here's the host name. the username, the file path. If I want to explore this one a little bit more, all I simply do is click on the signal, and it takes me into the signal view. Okay. So here I've got a bit more information around what was the particular signal that generated this alert. Again, as I come down through, I can see all of my extracted field values, usernames, file paths, threat names, and so on. As a SOC analyst, anything that I want to have in the header to make my life easy so I can just quickly view it, I can favorite those fields. You'll see these little gold stars here on each signal. So I can actually come down here and I can favorite any of these fields, and they will appear, excuse me, they will appear up here in the header for me. Okay. And again, just to make my investigation a lot quicker. So going back to this particular incident, literally in a matter of minutes, I've been able to determine here what the problem is. I've got a user that's clicked on a link. It's taken them to a malicious website. They've downloaded malware, which is executed on the endpoint. So I've been able to very quickly, investigate and triage this particular alert. If I think about some of the platforms I've worked with in the past, I might have got an endpoint security alert. Okay, my EDR solution might have sent an alert saying malware detected. And then I'd have to go and find out who was the user involved. I might then have to jump to my web gateway or my proxy, do a search for that user. What else did they do around this time? Where did they go? What was the link, and so on. But our insight clustering has actually brought all of that information together for me into one simple place. A couple of other things as well. I think I've got some enrichment information that's being populated here as well. So this is enrichment coming from Sentinel-1. I think I kind of covered off, we can enrich from Active Directory. We can enrich from something like an API call to VirusTotal. But we can also take enrichment information from an EDR solution, Sentinel-1, CrowdStrike, Carbon Black, those kind of things. And that gives me additional context here, okay, as a security analyst. So I'm able to kind of view a little bit more information around the particular endpoints in this scenario. This one hasn't populated with VirusTotal, but if it had, then I'd also get additional information around how many scan engines had detected this particular thing, that kind of level of information. Okay. So again, let me just step back to my view here. So now I've investigated this. As a SOC analyst now, my next thing here will probably be to quarantine this off the endpoint. If I'm running a SOAR capability, then I could invoke a SOAR playbook simply from here, okay, and that's kind of what I'm going to do. So I now come over to my actions field. When I click on actions here, you'll see there's a set of, quite a few different options here. I can have an action that does something as simple as send an email to another team, okay. I can integrate with Slack. I can send it to a specific Slack channel for, another team to do an investigation with. If I've got that integration with something like ServiceNow, I can push it off to a third-party ticketing system. But here, I've got an integration with the SOAR capability. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to contain this host using the EDR tool. Okay, that's likely to quarantine it off the network, run a full system scan, that kind of thing. You get the idea. So I simply come down here, click on contain host on the EDR, and I execute that action. Okay, that's done. That's now sent that off to be quarantined, contained, whatever. Now, as a SOC analyst, my next step here then would be to close the insight. So I come to close insight. I pick a resolution, and again, this has that relevance on that global severity score, the global confidence score we talked about. So I mark this one as resolved. I can populate some additional comments in here, so I can say pushed to EDR for remediation. I hope I've spelled that right. Not the push bit, got the easy word wrong. And now I just click on close insight. Okay. and that's that one done. I'm sure you'll agree, you know, that whole kind of workflow through that's nice and easy, very straightforward, and it's incredibly quick and time saving as well. So now, as a SOC analyst, it's kind of rinse and repeat, right? I go back to my insights, pick my next one to work on, and then go through and do pretty much the same steps for that one as well. Okay. A couple of other quick things to point out. I still have the ability to look at my security alerts that are being generated, i.e. outside of being clustered together. So I can still come in and I can do my typical threat hunting. You know, I could look at alerts being generated from CrowdStrike today. I could look at any alerts that are based around email activity. I have that ability to come in here. I can use various different filters to choose those options for me. Okay. If I wanted to look at something like, you know, where my severity score is greater or equal than 8, I can just apply a simple filter and then get the results back here for any security alert with a fairly high severity score. Okay. If I want to have a look at what users are doing, my particular entities, then I have this entity view. So in here, I can see everything from a user to a host to an IP, could be an internal IP, could be external, whatever's been detected in a security signal or an insight previously, populates into entities, okay, and then we start to track scores against them. So for each of these entities here, you can see this activity score on the right-hand side. If I choose something like a user, it'll tell me what I'm currently tracking for this user from a security signal perspective, okay. So here are the threats, here are the signals that are currently being detected as part of this clustering for this user. I can see previous activity. Again, as this is an Active Directory user, okay, I'll automatically have that information there populated, which is really good. If I come back, and let me see if I can find, yes, go for an external IP address here. I'm also populating all of my usual ASN information here as well, okay. The main point of all of this is it makes my investigation incredibly fast. I don't have to copy IPs and do an external lookup. I don't need to take a file hash and then go to VirusTotal. I have those integrations there ready to just do that for me and give me all of that information in here, okay? So it makes my investigation incredibly fast. It minimizes my risks in the environment. Because I'm able to detect, triage, and investigate and close, I'm minimizing how long I might have malicious software, the keylogger, active in my environment, that kind of thing. So those are kind of some of the key things there really to point out. And really just to kind of close off this session, you know, I want to kind of keep this fairly high level. I mentioned it, you know, we can go in and we can create our own custom rules. So any application that you have, whether it's might be a vendor we don't currently support, we tend to cover all of the majority of the common vendors. It might be a bespoke in-house application. Okay, I can create ingest mapping. I can get the logs into Sumo, both the core platform and Cloud SIEM. And then I can create detection rule content around it, whether that's a simple one-to-one mapping. You know, if this event ID is seen, create a signal. If I see 5 event IDs from this particular device, create a signal. You know, X number of firewall blocks followed by a success from the same or for the same user. There's a lot of different options there. Some of those are, you know, fairly familiar SIEM platform type correlation rules. I have the ability, as I mentioned, to bring in, you know, additional threat intelligence feeds. I can do sticks. I can do sticks taxi. Sorry. I can bring in, you know, simple CSV file of IPs. I can just bring those in as well. Okay, no problem at all. We can do file scanning at a network level. So I have the ability with the platform to deploy network sensors. I can bring my network traffic in, and then I can apply scanning rules against that network traffic. Okay, these are all features, they're standard, they're part of the product. Okay. So that kind of sums up, I guess, where I want to go with this level of demonstration to you. Hopefully it's kind of given you some good insights into how the product really does help in a modern security operations environment. You know, how we're able to go from those 5 million records down to 6 insights and be able to investigate those pretty quickly. And the whole kind of flow of the product, being able to bring as much context and information into the into the tool as possible, to save that precious time of having to jump out to external sources to do lookups, that kind of thing. Happy to answer any questions that anybody has for a couple of minutes. Please feel free to use the Q&A button that you can see on the link there. Failing that, my information's been popped into the chat channel there. So, you know, feel free to reach out to me. My Twitter handle is there. My email address is there. Always happy to kind of go through and you know, answer any questions. Let me just quickly flick back to my last slide, okay, which will give you a nice QR code. If I can find my application, there we go. Okay. So by all means, if you've got your mobile phones handy, feel free to just scan that QR code there, and then that will take you to our landing page for Cloud SIEM. Okay. I can see there's no questions that have been popped up there. If anything springs to mind after we close this session, please do reach out. Hopefully you've grabbed those details there. And thank you very much for joining this session. Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure kind of presenting to you, and hopefully we'll catch up again with you in the future. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.